Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And have you all been seeing this a little bit frequently recently inside the game? And that is because World of Tanks is clearly ramping up its relentless monetization model to put more and more loot boxes at more and more times of the year. In today's video, I'm going to give you a breakdown of all of the previous years and how the amount of loot boxes that we've had in the game is snowballing out of control, exactly how much of the new content is loot box exclusive, and why I think that World of Tanks, to all intents and purposes, should be added to the Wikipedia list of gacha games. As slowly but surely, your ability to be able to get new content is not so much how much you're willing to play the game, but how much you're willing to pay to put into it. So gacha games are those that implement the gachapon mechanic, which is a type of Japanese vending machine, you know, where you put a coin in and then you get a random toy out of. The free-to-play gaming industry has significantly jumped on this trend in recent years as they really blur the lines between video games and gambling and prey on many of our emotions that I'm going to be discussing today. So firstly, why am I making this video today and not before? As you would have seen, we've had a lot of loot boxes inside World of Tanks. Well, it's because, as you can see, the amount of loot boxes are increasing significantly. In the last 5 months alone, we had Holiday Ops boxes in December, we had Lunar boxes in February, we had Emerald boxes in March, and now we're going to have Orion boxes starting tomorrow. Now, if we go and take a look at the history of loot boxes inside World of Tanks, they were first introduced in 2016 for Holiday Ops. Now, originally, the World of Tanks boxes were closed gacha, so you actually had no idea of what you would be getting out of them. And some people dumped in thousands of dollars trying to get a Type 59 with no result. However, to be fair to Wargaming, since then, they have published all of the drop chances that you can get from the boxes, crates, whatever you want to call them. But I really don't think that this is probably Wargaming being generous to the whales that are dumping in mountains of cash. I think this is probably because of legal pressure, as it is now a requirement in many countries. And, you know, you can't even buy these things in Belgium. It should be starting to sound alarm bells for you. But back to the history of loot boxes in World of Tanks. The first ones were in 2016, then slowly but surely Wargaming rolled them out each year, and 4 years went by before Wargaming decided that releasing loot boxes wasn't just for gacha Christmas. And in the year of the pandemic 2020, we had Waffenträger loot boxes before we had them at Christmas. Wargaming repeated this in 2020, where they released Waffenträger boxes around about September, and then Holiday Ops boxes around Christmas. And then things started to ramp up a bit in 2022. Now, you won't have noticed this unless you're on the Asia server, or like me, you're a content creator who wants to be able to get reviews out for their international audience. And that is that Wargaming released, after the Waffenträger boxes, a Lunar exclusive Asia box that had the TL7 and the, at least unreleased outside of Asia, Yuderney tank. To be able to make those tank reviews, I think I ended up spending about £50 to £100. And while for me it's not the biggest of deals, it's kind of a business investment because I'm going to make that back in the ad revenue that I make from the videos. That was the first year where Wargaming had more than 2 sets of boxes throughout the year. But then, holy moly, I guess the success of Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail has meant that Wargaming have really been taking notes in that success of the industry. In 2023, we had Emerald boxes, then we had Mars boxes, then we had Waffenträger boxes, and then we had the traditional Holiday Ops boxes. Now, what was crazy about this is the kind of rewards that you're getting outside of the Holiday Ops box are usually trash apart from the tanks. Nobody really wants, at least in my opinion, the premium days unless you're a free-to-play player. Nobody's wanting to get like credit boosters, experience boosters. You really want to be able to get one of the tanks and hopefully one of the real big ones. It's not like the Christmas boxes where at least you're getting a meaningful currency that you can be able to use throughout the rest of the year. And honestly, purchasing the Holiday Ops boxes is one of the best ways to actively reduce the amount that you spend on World of Tanks. Sounds bizarre, right? However, considering Wargaming are filling most of the other contents with absolute trash outside of the new tanks that they release inside them, 2023 was the first year where it just started to get silly. However, not to be outdone, as I mentioned, we are 3 months or 5 months into this year. It's going by quickly. And we've already had 3 types of unique boxes in this year alone. We had Emerald, Lunar, and now we're having the Orion boxes, which are similar to the Mars last year. And you can almost be certain that we have at least 2 more sets of boxes that will be arriving before the end of the year. We'll have Waffenträger boxes, and then we'll have Holiday Ops boxes, which means that I need to actually drag this over a little bit, that if we copy paste these 2 into here as speculation, I would be very surprised that if at the end of 2024 we have not had 5 sets of boxes throughout the year, with maybe only 1 actually having kind of good value with the amount of gold that you can get. Now, whether this is something that Wargaming are going to continue into 2025 and beyond, are we going to have 6 types of boxes in 25, 7 types of boxes in 26? Accordingly, I wanted to look at just the last 6 months of Wargaming's releases and take a look to see how many were actually available outside of these loot boxes. So here is every single tier 8, 9, or premium tank, or alternatively tech tree tank at tier 10, or other vehicles which have been available, and how you've been able to purchase them. And you can find reviews of all of these tanks on the channel. So back in November, we had the Mittlerer. That was a special with Dune 2. It was unfortunate that the film got delayed, but the tank still went into the game. You could be able to purchase that one for gold, depending on how much of the battle pass you managed to play through. Then we didn't have anything until the end of November / start of December, where we had 4 new tanks go into the game. The Tiger Mouse, Type 63, Object 752, and also the XM66F, which were all loot box exclusives. And to this day, I don't think there's been any other way to be able to get them. But it's only been about 4 months since we had those 4 tanks. After this, Wargaming gave us Patton the Tank, and also gave us the Type 71, generously free, and also the Type 71 as a tech tree tank, although whether you would actually want to buy the Type 71 is another question. After this, we had the Snatch event, where you could purchase, albeit a reskin of a Charioteer, if you were able to work your way through the Battle Pass for a minimum of 3,500 and up to about 15,000 gold if you wanted to skip it all and not play. After that, we had an auction of the BZ-72-1, an auction of the ISU-1222, with the BZ-72-1 being very expensive, but at least you could be able to buy the vehicle individually, and while the price did scale up if you used that middle value, you kind of knew what of a price that you were going to have to spend. After that, in February, we had the Emerald boxes, where there was an Object 590 and a Miel that came into the game, but I'd like to highlight that the Miel is just a reskin of the Borask, so it's not really new content, but if you're a tank collector, you probably want to have got your hands on it. Next up, we had the Object 452K in the assembly shop. We had a TT130M go into the game via tokens, and I don't think it's possible for the free-to-play players to have got it yet, but you will be able to as your tokens roll over into the next battle pass. Then we had the T54D inside loot boxes, and the Alembic, which was a reskin of the Astron Rex. Then we had the Błyskawica, and the whole new Polish line of tech tree tanks. And then we had the AT60 and the Nemesis, which will be coming in the boxes tomorrow. So if we take a look at this list, it's kind of terrifying to think that out of these 19 tanks, you would have had to have got 10 of them inside boxes. Meaning that World of Tanks, it's kind of 50% gacha now. And even if you were a tank collector who had all of the other vehicles, this would still require you to have purchased 500 boxes to be able to guarantee yourself to get all of that new content. Yeah, that's an expensive hobby. So what kind of practices are Wargaming employing to try and make these loot boxes a success? Well, firstly, there's price anchoring. You'll go onto their website and you'll see the initial box value for purchasing a single box, and then you'll see that you can get up to a 40% discount if you purchase an astronomical amount of boxes, sometimes 50, sometimes 75, sometimes 100. And this gives the players an idea that they're kind of getting value or that they're getting a big discount. But realistically, compared to what we used to have, where you could just purchase a premium tank when it was sold in the store, having to buy 50 loot boxes to possibly get the tank that you want is still just as expensive as if you had purchased the vehicle individually. Which means that unless you really wanted all of the usually mediocre stuff, the extra stuff that they put in the boxes, you're getting by far of a worse deal. Next up, Wargaming are heavily preying on fear of missing out, because we have no idea when these vehicles are going to be available again, because of Wargaming's inability, or shall I say cowardice, balancing some of the more destructive vehicles inside their game, such as the BZ-176. Here we are sitting like 16 months later after the vehicle was first released inside loot boxes, and it has never been sold since. Meaning that in theory, if you don't collect all of the vehicles as you go along in the boxes, to all intents and purposes, you may never be able to get that vehicle again. And unless Wargaming were to say that we guarantee that these vehicles will be available for sale individually 6 months or a year after they've been, should we say, a loot box exclusive, then you can totally understand why World of Tanks collectors are feeling very pressured into sometimes stretching their finances in getting the tank while it's available for like a 10-day period. So now I want to talk about the rolling, the pulling, and the opening system that World of Tanks employs. And that is because Wargaming fill the boxes with prizes that you may or may not want. This goes hand in hand with the pity system that they incorporated, I think it was in 2017 or 2018, where if you haven't managed to get a tier 8 or tier 9 premium after 50 boxes, then the game would give you one guaranteed. Now, this was a huge step in the right direction, and it definitely meant that I felt that the whole system was less dirty. Because what it would mean is that if you didn't get the vehicle in the first 50 boxes, then you were guaranteed to be able to get it. And so it created this finite amount that you could be able to put into the game to get exactly what you would want. However, the issue is that Wargaming don't only put the new tanks inside the boxes and you guaranteed to get them after 50 or 100 boxes. There are going to be, well, as you know, a whole host of other tanks that you may or may not want. If we take the recent Emerald event as an example, if you were a brand new World of Tanks player and you didn't have any of these tanks and you went and watched a tank review and you saw the T-54D and you fell in love with it and you wanted to be able to get your hands on this tank, what would happen is after buying 50 boxes, you would get any one of these vehicles, irrelevant of which one that you wanted. So let's say that 50 boxes roughly cost about $50. So in theory, considering there are 10 different outcomes to the pity system where you get a guaranteed tier 8 or tier 9 premium tank, what that would mean is that you would have to spend on average $250 to purchase 250 boxes to have a 50-50 chance of being able to get that tank. However, 1 in 10 times, the one that you wanted would actually be the last vehicle that you would get. So in theory, 10% of the time, you would have to open all 500 boxes to be able to get the vehicle, which is $500. That is an astronomical sum. And irrelevant of how much the Wargaming throw into the boxes to try to incentivize you that this is a good purchase, why can't we just purchase the tank individually? Why can't we go to Wargaming and say, hey, take my $50, let me buy some virtual pixels inside a video game? But Wargaming perfectly well know that they don't want to just take your $50. They want to take hundreds of dollars from you, filling your account with currency that you may or may not want to hope that you get lucky in a system to get what you actually do. The next thing that Wargaming are doing is they realize that making new tanks requires tank development, tank time, new models. It's complicated. It's hard work for Wargaming. So what they're doing instead is they're taking vehicles that we already have and they're just putting them in the game with a different name with a fancy 3D style. You can see the Forest Spirit there, and you can also see the Alembic. That is just an SU-130 PM, and it is just an Astron Rex. Now, keep in mind that Wargaming do have a system in-game so that you could just put 3D styles on your vehicles. So clearly what Wargaming are realizing is that they're not making enough money from selling 3D styles, maybe because they don't actually have a store where you could just go and purchase them. And so now they're forcing you to have to maybe get clones of tanks that you already have just to be able to get maybe the tanks that you actually want. Effectively, what this means is that if you're a tank collector, you're pretty much getting taxed for about $100 roughly every time that Wargaming releases a new set of boxes. However, you're usually getting one reskin, one new tank, but the real losers are that Wargaming effectively is trying to turn everyone into a tank collector if you want to have the privilege of getting a vehicle when it first comes out. But, as is the case with the BZ176, possibly the only time it's ever for sale. This is completely predatory, and what it is trying to do is to force more people to become dolphins or whales rather than minnows inside the game. Now, this is industry terminology, or maybe I think it's probably fairer to say community terminology in a way. A minnow is somebody who doesn't really spend anything or spends very little inside a free-to-play game. A dolphin is someone who spends more, and a whale is someone who's willing to purchase absolutely everything because they must have it. Well, what Wargaming are effectively doing is quite often like the dolphins who would just want to be able to purchase a tier 9 premium because it looks really cool. They're trying to turn them into whales to force them to be able to purchase a lot of the stuff that they wouldn't, just to be able to have the want that they actually do. It's, at least in my opinion, predatory to the extreme, and considering that this isn't something that only happens at Christmas now, when you're getting a lot of gold, sought after currency from the boxes. And so you know what, if the standard is you have to buy 100 boxes at Christmas to be able to keep up as a tank collector, okay, sure, that's fine. But we've already had 3 boxes so far this year, and I would be very surprised if we don't have an additional 2 boxes by the end of it, meaning that we're pretty much getting boxes every 6 to 8 weeks in World of Tanks, making this game more and more expensive if you want to keep up with filling out your garage slots with those virtual pixels that, remember, you are only renting from World of Tanks, and Wargaming are able to turn off the servers whenever they want, with no value for those vehicles will be returned to you. Now, let me clarify, I don't think World of Tanks is in any position where Wargaming would want to do that, but it is something to consider if you feel the squeeze of money that you're spending in a game that possibly you're not enjoying as much as you used to. However, now with the Orion boxes, Wargaming are taking this to an extreme, because the day before the event, Wargaming are not even telling us what the extra vehicles are that are going to be inside the loot boxes. And it's one of the reasons why I'm releasing this video quite late today. I genuinely thought that we would be able to see the tanks that were inside the loot boxes, but here we are. I'm recording this at about 5 or 6 UK time, and there's still no way to find out what probably the other 4 to 6 to 8 tanks, apart from the AAT-60 and the Nemesis, you're going to be able to get tomorrow. Now, why would Wargaming do that? Are they doing that because they want you to be purchasing vehicles randomly and not see which ones are coming up, so you avoid them and you wait to purchase them? Or are they doing this because they want you to perceive that these boxes are going to be good value, hiding the tier 8 premium tanks that are going to be filling up the boxes to brush it under the carpet for customers who are maybe looking at the new toys that they actually want? However, one of the things that Wargaming I feel have gone too far with is that they're releasing, albeit a very cool Star Trek style, that is going to be an exclusive inside the boxes. However, as far as I can tell, I haven't had any kind of confirmation as to whether you're going to have to get the vehicle first before then you have the opportunity of getting the 3D style in the boxes, or whether you will just get the 3D style and then you have to get yourself the tank to be able to use it. Nevertheless, this, as far as I'm aware, is the first time that Wargaming have had a 3D style exclusive inside a loot box at the same time that the vehicle came out. Wargaming, are you really trying to squeeze us for that much money that you couldn't just give the 3D style for players who were lucky enough to be able to get them from probably loot boxes that they don't want to purchase? This makes me incredibly alarmed that Wargaming will be testing this as a feature for future editions of their Gacha game, where it's not going to be enough alone to have to get all 10 vehicles. If you want the vehicle to look cool, well, then you're going to have to purchase a possibly infinite amount of boxes. Because while Wargaming does have pity mechanics for the tanks, they don't have pity mechanics for the styles. And I strongly feel that Wargaming are testing the waters here, and clearly by adding 1 extra box every year for the last 3 years to their monthly cycle, now they're adding in Gacha styles that you're going to be getting as well. And that really is where Wargaming could make a lot of money, because this is new content that they realize from the Christmas boxes that some people have to purchase hundreds and hundreds of them because they got unlucky and they want to get those really cool looking styles and they want to add it to other events during the year. It's dirty, it's predatory. Wargaming do the right thing and have pity mechanics for the styles as well after you've managed to purchase the vehicle, or shall I say, after you've managed to get lucky to get the vehicle. Now, what's ridiculous as well is this is not only the worst thing about the loot boxes. Now, Wargaming are releasing previously exclusive experimental equipment inside the loot boxes as well. And I feel that this is a whole new level of pay to win inside the game. I went on Reddit and I noticed that there was a popular thread where people were linking that in the very guide, the content guide in World of Tanks to experimental equipment, Wargaming say this experimental type combines 2 or more characteristics of other types of equipment in the game. Experimental equipment cannot be purchased. Instead, it is obtained by completing combat missions and participating in certain events. Now, a lot of people have been making fun of Wargaming because they said experimental equipment cannot be purchased, and obviously there's an immense irony that now you're going to literally be able to buy loot boxes to be able to get experimental equipment. It might end up costing you $200 for upgrading one from level 2 to level 3. But look, if you're a whale, you're gonna whale. However, it's the second sentence that I would like to critique. Instead, it is obtained by completing combat missions and participating in certain events. Well, if Wargaming now feel that this is what participation in World of Tanks means, where you literally just go and get better equipment that is going to make your tanks better than if you were using standard equipment, it's just another pay-to-win nail in this coffin. Now I want to come to one of my main points and why I'm so disappointed with this system, and why frankly it's just caught up on me year on year on year. And that is, back in 2015, Wargaming started to sell tanks in bundles. So instead of just the vehicle being available in the premium store for $30 or $40, you now had to purchase a month of premium as well as the tank. And this started to inflate the bundle prices up to like $50, $60 for some of the really exclusive tanks when they were available for the first time. Now, I had the privilege of visiting Wargaming's headquarters in Cyprus in 2016 with other content creators such as Jingles. We sat down, we had the privilege of speaking to Victor Kisley, who's the CEO at Wargaming. And after much discussion, Wargaming did agree that all future tanks would be available individually. And while, yeah, new content was available individually, that very Christmas in 2016, the Holiday Ops boxes did include the Type 59. To be fair, the Holiday Ops boxes, I don't think they actually included any new tanks. And while 8 years have passed since that meeting that we had with Wargaming and with Victor Kisley, the world situation has changed. The gaming situation has changed, and the World of Tanks situation has changed. It's still so disappointing to me to think that at least 50% of the new content has not been available in the last 6 months for you to just purchase. Wargaming, why are you being so greedy that you aren't willing to allow your players to give you $50 to just purchase a tank without having to go through the whole gacha system to be able to purchase a load of vehicles that they have absolutely no interest in having in their garage? And I know exactly why it is. I'm not an idiot. It's because Wargaming don't just want your $50. They want $100. They want $150. They want $200. They want you to spend $200 getting a bunch of tanks and bunch of clones and bunch of reskins that you have no interest in, or maybe you've already got in the game, which look better with the other styles that you've been collecting, because you have massive fear of missing out in purchasing one of the new tanks that you may have never got the opportunity to purchase again. And for that, it just makes me so embarrassed to be a World of Tanks creator. While there's always been pay to win in World of Tanks, it is massively increasing in 2024. And while World of Tanks has never been the cheapest game to play, at least I felt that the price tags were fair. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video for all of you today, that if you are a tank collector, I would seriously question whether it's worth it going forwards, as Wargaming are truly pushing the boundaries as to what is sustainable in their game and how heavily they want to monetize their player base. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was me just pitching on the whole gacha situation in World of Tanks, the lunacy of the amount of loot boxes that we have. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the situation. Are you someone who has been suckered into purchasing a load of loot crates and you didn't even get the vehicle that you wanted? Do you think it's ridiculous that the day before the event we don't actually know which tier 8 premium tanks are going to be available inside the loot boxes? And what do you think about Wargaming putting experimental equipment in? And what do you think specifically about this 3D style? The tank that you get isn't even going to come with the fancy style unless you randomly get it afterwards. And I'd also really like to hear from anyone who, as I said, players who have been burnt in this gacha system that World of Tanks is rolling out more and more and more. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.